All right, let's bring in the Washington Post national political reporter Robert Costa, along with Hugh Hewitt, the host of the Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network, and Maria Teresa Kumar of Voto Latino. All three are MSNBC contributors. Hugh, let me start with you. The question here was clarity. Would Donald Trump finally provide clarity after a few weeks of speculation about what softening might mean in terms of his position on immigration? Let me ask you, do you think he provided clarity tonight? And do you think that that clarity that he provided, will it attract new voters who weren't already with him?
He provided clarity from the beginning of the day to the end, I think, Steve. It was his very best day of his presidential campaign. Bill Kristol earlier with Lawrence O'Donnell was making, I think, the key takeaway. When you start with the morning, bad news for Hillary Clinton all over the place. Her negatives are down in the Washington Post poll. Obamacare is falling apart. 30 new concealed emails on Benghazi. Donald Trump goes down to Mexico, has a very perfectly normal diplomatic engagement with the president of Mexico. Has a great press conference afterwards, takes questions, which Secretary Clinton won't take from the press in any setting, and then comes back and gives a very, very sophisticated speech that I think mirrors. I did 170 interviews with active Republican presidential candidates. That was the mainstream policy, what he articulated today. We do points 1 through 10 first, and then we'll talk about the other people. I think it is a softening. I also think it was sophisticated and very powerful.
Maria Teresa Kumar, how about you? Do you think there was a softening there at all in terms of how he addressed, or didn't address for that matter, the 11 million who are already here?
First of all, there's no softening. And also, he was basically speaking on both sides of his mouth as he was on both sides of the border. When he was in Mexico today, Stephen, he basically said that immigration, illegal immigration, undocumented immigration was a humanitarian issue. What we just heard from Donald Trump, there was nothing humanitarian about it. The fact that he is willing to round up 11 million people, first of all, would break the bank of Homeland Security, would nearly bankrupt whole economies in different states, as Georgia has tried to do and realized that they can't. And he's not providing the leadership that we actually need to have in this country and recognize that we need a form of to fix the immigration system, because there are over 6 million Americans who live with mixed status families, meaning that they are living among people who may not be able to come out of the shadows because they are undocumented. I have to give it to Donald Trump. He's consistent when it comes to understanding how to play the media, how to play with words. But if you pay close attention with what he did with Mexico today, saying that, again, undocumented illegal immigration was a humanitarian issue, and then he came over into Arizona and switched his words, speaking in code, I found this nothing short of a hate speech.
Let me ask you, how did you read, and I think we're going to talk about this as the hour goes along, trying to figure out exactly what his plan here is for the 11 million. Some people read the speech of Maria Teresa Kumar as Donald Trump leaving it open that he will go after criminals, he'll go after people with criminal records, people he deems a security risk, and the status of anybody remaining after that will sort of be left up in the air and kicked down the road. Did you read it that way, or did you read it as he's saying he's going to deport everybody all at once?
No, he basically did a sliding scale. He espoused right now what President Obama's situation is, which basically says we're going to identify the criminals and deport them first. But then Donald Trump doubled down and said we're going to get everybody and make sure that they leave the border. Homeland Security has, the Congressional Budget Office has actually done extensive research on this and actually has demonstrated that the idea of rounding up 11 million people would bankrupt Homeland Security. It's nearly impossible. And it's also not an actual policy that would be sustainable. Donald Trump also said that the world was watching today. You bet they were watching, and they were getting incredibly frightened. I mean, some of the stuff that he used, he basically doubled down on. It's words that we've heard before, right? A deportation task force, extreme vetting, ideological certification. What exactly does that mean? He's going after people that are slightly different of what a mainstream American should look like. Every single American should be completely alarmed with what they just heard.
Trump also in this speech mentioned something he's mentioned quite a bit during the campaign, the idea of not just building the wall, but having Mexico pay for it. Take a listen.
We will build a great wall along the southern border, and Mexico will pay for the wall. They don't know it yet, but they're going to pay for the wall. And they're great people and great leaders, but they're going to pay for the wall.
Now, earlier today, the president of Mexico assured his Twitter followers that that would not be the case, that Mexico, he says, will not pay for Trump's proposed wall, also saying that he had raised that issue with Trump in their meeting earlier today. Trump saying that that hadn't happened during that impromptu press conference after their joint statement earlier today. Robert Costa, let me ask you about the sort of stark difference in tone from this afternoon, what we saw in Mexico City, Donald Trump extending his hand to the president of Mexico, saying, I consider you a friend, talking glowingly. He said of first, second, third, fourth generation Mexican Americans. And the tone of this speech tonight, this was a hardline speech, I think, by any definition, by any standard. What did the campaign think they were accomplishing with that very different tone coming out of these two events?
The trip to Mexico was finalized over the weekend and then on Monday and Tuesday. This was done by members of the family, in particular Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law. That's based on my reporting, Trump sources. And also Trump's top advisors, Kellyanne Conway and Stephen Bannon. And they were trying to project with this trip some surprise and also a presidential presentation and image for Donald Trump. The difference, though, Steve, with the speech tonight is that as much as the presidential image-making was going on with the trip to Mexico, Trump's speechwriting operation and his policy shop remains dominated by Stephen Miller, a former aide to Jeff Sessions, the hardline conservative. Sessions himself is influential, and of course, Steve Bannon, who used to run Breitbart News. They're pushing Trump. They're suggesting that Trump sticks with his immigration position that has long been at the center of his campaign. So you have these, not two camps, but these many voices within Trump's campaign trying to keep him where he's always been on immigration.
And Hugh Hewitt, I mean, we talk about it all the time when we just look at the demographic challenge that Donald Trump's faced in this campaign. He's lost a constituency. He's been losing a constituency that's been pretty loyal to the Republican Party going back generations. That's college-educated white voters. You go all the way back to 1952. You can't find a Republican nominee losing them. Donald Trump is losing them right now in the polls to Hillary Clinton. And a lot of suggestions are his tone, the tone of his message, the tone of his campaign has a lot to do with that. Is there any concern on your part watching that speech tonight that the tone plays into those same concerns that were already there with those voters?
No, Stephen, I think, in fact, tonight's tone, he mentioned at least twice, maybe three times, the Supreme Court, which is an appeal to bedrock conservatives, to originalists, to people like me who've argued the court is in the balance. He repeatedly brought up Secretary Clinton's problems with the law. So layered into this very detailed speech on immigration policy was deftly woven some themes that he needs to do to accomplish his most important electoral thing. The Real Clear Politics average right now has him down 5 points. That's closed 2 points, as he noted in the speech, over the course of a week. He had to bring up Hillary's negatives. He had to reassure, however, traditional Republican base voters to come home. I heard Bill Kristol make this in the last hour. I think that Robert would agree. I don't know if Maria Teresa would agree with this, but she's probably not a traditional Republican voter. They've had concerns about temperament. The trip to Mexico, combined with what is the traditional Republican approach in the House, enforcement first, security first, finish the fence that was authorized in 2006 and never built, is going to be very reassuring. And I hope he keeps this tone. I see a lot more Kellyanne Conway than anyone else in this speech, and whoever wrote it gets gold stars because it was, as I said earlier, deftly delivered.
Steve. All right, Hugh Hewitt, Robert Costa, Teresa Kumar, excuse me, stay with us. We got to squeeze a quick break in, but we'll be hearing more from you as the hour goes along. And we're back again with MSNBC political analyst Robert Costa of The Washington Post, conservative talk show host Hugh Hewitt, as well as Maria Teresa Kumar, president of Voto Latino. And Robert Costa, before that last break, I know you were trying to get in, had to cut you off to squeeze that in, but wanted to give you a chance to say what you wanted to say.
Well, what we're seeing from Trump is really an echo of what he did a year ago in this same space, the Phoenix Convention Center, where he gave a hardline speech on immigration, made it the center of his candidacy. This was Trump tonight. We always talk about who's in his ear, who's advising him, but this speech was pure Trump. This was who Trump is, someone who has these nationalistic, aggressive impulses when it comes to immigration, going after illegal immigration.
And Maria, the difference, I guess, between then and now, or between even last week and now when it comes to Donald Trump and this topic, is today he did get the opportunity to share the stage with the head of state, with the president of Mexico, offered some, I guess, extra legitimacy by that. You always look in politics at that plausibility test they talk about when voters go into the voting booth. Can they see the candidate actually sitting there performing the job of president? Did the president of Mexico do Donald Trump a favor today in that regard?
I mean, I'm still trying. I'm scratching my head over that one. He has some of the lowest favorability in Mexico, and he brings in someone that Mexicans like even less than he. That made no sense to me, quite frankly. But speaking about trying to act like macho and being a man that can go toe to toe with someone, Donald Trump was facing the president of Mexico and didn't have the guts to actually ask him to pay for the wall. Yet he goes on, crosses the border again into Arizona, and says, "I'm going to make them pay the wall." But I think I guess my biggest challenge in having these conversations is that we keep treating Donald Trump like a traditional candidate. He is not. He is not someone that we have ever seen in modern times. The way he knows how to rile up a base, the way he knows how to talk in code and blow racial whistles so that all of a sudden everybody knows exactly what he's saying, but he doesn't have to say it out loud, is incredibly dangerous. And we have to stop treating him like an actual candidate. There's a reason why we have over 100 Republicans that are distancing themselves from Trump, saying he is not our ideology, he is not our brand, because what he speaks to and what he stands for is so diametrically opposed to what America is. We are a nation of immigrants, Steve. The fact that we are not acknowledging that and basically trying to parse out nuances is dangerous, because he's actually telling us that he is going to create a second class of citizens, and we should be okay with that.
A piece of news just coming across the wire here in the last couple of minutes to tell you about. This is from Reuters, the news service Reuters, reporting that Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto says that some of Trump's policy stances articulated tonight represent threats to Mexico. Again, this just in the last few minutes, the president of Mexico saying that some of what Donald Trump said tonight represents a threat to his country. This just hours after that meeting between the president of Mexico and Donald Trump. Hugh Hewitt, in terms of the fallout from that meeting specifically, we have obviously these new comments from the president of Mexico right now. Also, you have the controversy now, if you want to call it that, where Donald Trump has talked, and Maria just talked about this a minute ago. Donald Trump has spent the last year saying he's going to get Mexico to pay for this wall. Comes up at this press conference afterwards. He says, well, didn't actually raise the issue. Does he look bad at all because of that?
Steve, this was a 100% great day for Donald Trump. We could dig around and try and find something bad to say about it, but everything went his way today. He talked about the rule of law. He struck at the executive orders. He began tonight's speech, by the way, complimenting the president of Mexico, complimenting the Mexican people, going out of his way to talk about Mexican Americans of first, second, and third generation. He did, in fact, soften because he used the term priority, which is, again, mainstream Republican rhetoric, although he gave a very vibrant, vigorous speech on border enforcement and security. And most importantly, he challenged the media at the end to start telling the stories of those angel moms, those families. That was powerful stuff. And I believe we can try and nibble around the edges, but as of this morning, in the Marquette Law School poll in Wisconsin, that's the best poll, I think Robert would agree, in Wisconsin, he's closed the gap to 2 points. If I look at Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Hampshire, Nevada, and possibly Wisconsin and Michigan, and Iowa, that's where he's got to win. I think the whole day today helped him in every one of those battleground states. Every one.
All right, Hugh Hewitt, Maria Teresa Kumar, Robert Costa. Thanks all for your time. Appreciate it.